We're speaking to you on industry insights on the Capital Works Management Framework BIM implementation over the last couple of years. So I'm a director at Roughan Consulting Engineers. We have about 270 staff servicing public and private clients across the UK and Ireland. But the hat I'm wearing today is as the convener of the ACEI, the Association of Consulting Engineers of Ireland, BIM and Digitalisation Committee. So we've heard it already today. A lot of you will be familiar with the Capital Works Management Framework core BIM requirements. First notified to the industry in a formal sense, probably summer 2 years ago, and then formally implemented in January of last year. And we see a lot now coming through in contract requirements, tender documents and the likes. And we have a standing agenda item in our meetings at committee level where we get feedback from members on the sorts of requirements that they're seeing coming through in tender documents, the implementation happening by clients and other project participants on projects. And we do see a lot of reference to these requirements: Uniclass 2015, ISO 19650, parts 1 and 2, IFC not so much, ICMS, I think I've seen it once so far over the last couple of years in civil infrastructure. But there is a gap, and I'll talk a bit about that now. So the supply chain, certainly on larger projects, so the side of the industry I'm in is large infrastructure delivery, railways, highways, bridges, multidisciplinary projects, tens, hundreds of millions. So the supply chain involved in those sorts of projects is pretty mature in terms of digital adoption. A lot of them are probably, including ourselves, have probably been certified in BIM for many years, have various processes implemented, are seeing value in model-based collaboration, particularly in building infrastructure. A lot of the bigger projects, architects and engineers have been exchanging models for years, have been getting value out of that. Clients haven't necessarily been deriving value with the asset handover at the end, asset information handover at the end, and obviously a lot of the information requirements at the core BIM level in the Capital Works Management Framework are trying to derive that value from the industry. But there's a lot of capabilities there, and we heard, of course, the perspective of the smaller companies, whether they're architects, engineering consultancies, smaller suppliers. There are difficulties in implementation. And we have to be careful not to forget about them, but there are some leading lights there as well in digital adoption. What we did see, the Build Digital project is doing great work, and one of the really good pieces of work in particular that they've done is the Build Digital survey. The latest survey is out at the moment, so if you have an opportunity to respond to that, do so. But looking at the results of the 2024 survey, which are similar to the 2023 in this particular issue, the biggest challenge in BIM contracts is identified consistently as being the contract had insufficient instructions to follow. And we heard people talk about that in the keynote addresses this morning. And that is because there's a big gap between the Capital Works Management Framework requirements and the industry need. And of course, deeper, the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, who implemented the Capital Works Management Framework requirements, recognise that. They've essentially put the obligation on public clients to write their own requirements. But a lot of the public clients don't have the capabilities, the expertise, the time, the inclination to actually write those requirements. And we heard Tommy from Finland speak about it this morning, in the absence of clear, detailed requirements, preferably machine readable requirements that we can bring into our systems through machine readable schema. In the absence of those requirements, it's very hard for industry to know what to do. You end up dealing with moving files around, naming them correctly, moving them through WIP and published, and etc. It becomes more about document management rather than data management. So there's a big gap there, and because of that gap, a lot of the industry suppliers don't really know what to do to try and meet the client's need, and even the clients don't know exactly how to specify, so you get these high-level aspirational BIM requirements which really are somewhat meaningless. And we see a lot of evidence from tenders and contracts. As I said, we're drawing in knowledge from the industry. Our committee engages with Build Digital, engages with other committees from industry, from professional bodies. There's a lack of consistency, a lack of even at a basic level, file naming. Like we were doing structured file naming for 25 years, and on one project you've got one client, a public owner, with one format of file naming, and then someone else is using the UK National Annex, and then someone else tells you what they want in the general sense, but then you ask them 6 months into the contract, can we please have your project specific requirements, and they still won't make a decision, but you can't, they won't let you make a decision, and then eventually 6 months, 12 months into the job, they tell you what their naming requirements are, and you're going back through all of your CDEs to try and update everything. It's completely inefficient and unnecessary, and that's just dealing with file naming, not even down to the granular level of instance data and attributes associated with that instance data. So it's a really tricky issue. It's not easy, I'm not going to pretend it is, but it's a huge gap at the moment. That and other similar issues are leading to supply chain inefficiencies, which means that the underlying reason for implementing these to derive value for the exchequer isn't actually being met. And on the opposite side of things, it's actually probably costing clients more than they had anticipated, and they may not be getting the value at the end in terms of structured, high-quality information that they can use for asset management. And that then leads to a risk of commercial claims, because you've got clients saying, well, we wrote we wanted BIM, you're not giving us what we wanted. And then they might explain what they wanted, but then the contractors and the consultants are claiming back fees or costs, and that's leading to issues at a contract level. And then, as I said, with the file naming, there's a divergence in practical application. So there's a broad range of issues. And not to be wholly negative about it, there's a lot of good progress. You know, some very well-informed clients, project teams who are willing to engage with the clients, sit down, have BIM goal meetings at the start, modify what they're planning to do, not necessarily charge for it, take a little bit off here and add it on over there, and ultimately provide value. But that isn't necessarily the case in all. So in other countries, how have they closed that gap? The big thing, the green word at the top there, publish, publish, publish. There's no point in public bodies, whether it's Department of Education or whatever, having specific requirements written into tenders if they haven't told the supply chain in advance what they're going to have in their contract requirements. Public bodies need to write standards, need to publish their requirements, asset information requirements and likes, get them up on their websites, and then refer to them in contract documents. Because otherwise, tendering consultants and contractors are scrambling to try and understand it, how to price it, how to deliver it. So publish, and these are countries, for example, and our Environment Agency, Data Asset Requirements Library. Look at the work that they've done in the UK, having learnt when you're trying to manage a huge stock of assets, flood risk management infrastructure. The work that they've done is excellent, and it's used on a daily basis by project participants. The Oslo programme in Belgium, really pushing the boundaries with the adoption of web-based technologies, linked data, semantic web and the likes, and various other examples there. But in all of these cases, the public clients have published the requirements. And what then happens is that the local authorities, who may not have the resources to develop such detailed requirements, they then adopt those and apply them in their own contracts. So if you can think about a local authority in Ireland who might not have the ability to write all of the asset information requirements for how do you manage a lighting column or a room in a building, but maybe they could adopt what the Department of Education do or the HSE or whatever. So our recommendations then, and they're communicated in a position paper. I'll stick up a LinkedIn post after this where you can get it. I probably should have put a QR code up, but there's a position paper there that we really would like industry participants to read and provide us with feedback on. But the first one is that large public asset owners really need to develop and publish asset information requirements. That's not easy. You know, the Deutsche Bahn in Germany engaged consultants for 6 months to write their asset information requirements. Transport Infrastructure Ireland are currently engaging consultants across a couple of different things, so whether it's Metrolink, light rail, road infrastructure design and construction, road infrastructure maintenance, different asset information requirements, and they're working on it at the moment. It's not an easy job. You can't just spend a few weeks on it. So large public asset owners need to invest in that and publish their asset information requirements. And it's great to know, for example, that Transport Infrastructure Ireland will be publishing BIM standards next year, and hopefully they'll have detailed information requirements with those asset information requirements. Government funding in return for providing input. So DEPR are providing infrastructure projects and the likes with additional funding to enable the achievement of the objectives that they've set out in the Capital Works Management Framework and the requirements. It's important that that funding enables recruitment of expertise within the public bodies and paying the supply chain to all work together to improve the actual deliverables and the requirements underpinning those deliverables at a project level. A lot of these projects are multi-year projects. Things move on over that time. But what this recommendation isn't just that they derive value on that particular project, but that they're constantly feeding the lessons back, whether it be through DEPR, the Office of Government Procurement previously, and now DEPR, or through the Build Digital project, that they're feeding it back, and that there's a kind of a national level benefit in terms of information management, not just at a project level. And that then leads on to the final one, that it would enable DEPR and Build Digital and others to actually publish more detailed requirements rather than these taglines, which are great, but they're just not detailed enough. And again, I reference some of the presentations this morning. So we need more detail in the industry to enable government and the Exchequer to derive the value that they seek. So at the ACEI, we are engaging with public and private bodies. I do encourage you to seek out that position paper, to have a read of it. If you want to provide feedback to us, contact me on LinkedIn, contact info@ACEI, provide us with feedback. If you want to sit down and talk about it, whether you're involved in a professional institution, anything else like that, please do provide us with feedback, because we want to be able to provide work with you on constructive feedback to the likes of DEPR, who have engaged in this process to date, and major infrastructure asset owners and building asset owners at a public level. Thank you very much.